So let's dive into this controversy that is the ancient handbag, which stems from a theory that claims it's actually not a handbag at all, but something else entirely, which at first, I know, makes absolutely no goddamn sense. But believe it or not, there is actually a very real, very valid argument for this theory, and it all boils down to two very simple, surprisingly logical points: context and volume. For example, many will argue that the handbag is simply a vessel for the pine cone, which we see here. However, that interpretation only kinda makes sense within ancient Mesopotamia, where the handbag is featured f***ing everywhere, and not always within the presence of a pine cone or, really, anything, which is actually the case in just about every other instance our handbag makes an appearance, which is also f***ing everywhere, bringing me to my point. A handbag only makes sense if there is something to carry. A handbag by itself, on the other hand, is f***ing confusing. And yes, oh my god, this same question also applies to those of you who consistently insist it's a bucket and not a handbag, because I get your argument that it's metaphorical as a bringer of life because water goes in a bucket, but you know what, so does a lot of other shit. And without that specific context, again, its random appearance is fucking confusing. Which brings me to the volume, which is goddamn staggering, because seriously, this thing is everywhere, which is probably the most intriguing aspect about this symbol, because here's the thing. It's a f***ing handbag, a tiny man-made object whose functionality is pretty goddamn minimal, almost non-existent, yet for some shit-ass reason, dozens of ancient cultures spread throughout the known world, separated by thousands of years and miles, feature it prominently within their artwork, and always within the possession or presence of a god, which at the end of the day, let's just be honest here, makes absolutely no goddamn sense. Now, here's where things get a little tricky, because the fact of the matter is everyone sees the issue and weirdness with a handbag just randomly hanging in a tree or just floating in the air. That being said, we find a way to dismiss it or explain it away as symbolism or a metaphor, because if we don't, well, then we have to consider the alternative, which I'll admit definitely goes 0 to 100 real f***ing quick. So brace yourself, because the alternative is that what we are actually seeing is misidentified technology, which, I get it, for many is a ridiculous, borderline insane theory. But it doesn't change the fact that if you look at this symbol through that scope, which again, I totally get it, is shitballs crazy, it absolutely fits the context, and in more ways than you'd think, because if you thought the first theory was fucking out there, then this next one might have you punching the screen, because many people believe that what we're actually seeing is the technology that was used to move these massive stones into place, which is exactly the same story our ancient ancestors wrote down and told for generations when explaining just how in the absolute these ancient structures, many of which our smartest of smarts still can't explain, were built. All of that being said, I'll admit, it is these theories, right or wrong, that ruin what is otherwise a very intriguing symbol, because you have to admit, it is very odd the random appearance of what looks to be a handbag within what is basically the creation story for many of the world's ancient civilizations. Right?